Hey, what's up, friends? Let me ask you guys a question. Do you like to get revenge on people that have done you wrong? Do you like to get revenge on people who have done you wrong? If so, shame on you. But also, stay tuned for this episode that we're calling The Big Payback. All right, let's go.
Welcome to the Friday Fraudster podcast. Join them as they discuss sad, funny, and sometimes disturbing fraud stories. Be sure to catch past episodes on your favorite podcasting platform or go to www.fridayfraudster.com.
All right, what's happening, friends? Did you hear my question? Are you the type of person that seeks revenge on other people when you get upset? Do you seek revenge on people when you get upset? Look, we've got Stephanie here already from Idaho. Good day to you, ma'am. And Carol is on YouTube. By the way, if you hadn't subscribed to our YouTube channel, what are you waiting for? Go on over to the YouTube channel. You know what, though? While I have your attention, I want to invite you to the next episode of Audit Bites, which is going to be next Tuesday. You know what? If you're listening to this, I don't know specifically what I'm going to talk about next Tuesday. So throw out some topics for me. One thing I thought about was courage, because, the new IIA standards say that we have to now be courageous. I think that we're already courageous, but I think they just wanted to place an emphasis on it, which I think is a good thing. Don't get me wrong, but I think that we're already courageous. Now, somebody is saying they prefer karma. Yeah, I'm with you on that. This must be Stephanie, I think. I'll be able to cheat in a minute and see who it is. And by the way, let me just stop blabbering and bring on our special co-host for today. Uh-oh. Wait a minute. Surprise.
Surprise.
Surprise. Okay, so Christine.
Yes.
The question for you is, when someone does you wrong, do you seek revenge on them?
I am with Stephanie. I prefer the power of karma. Now, I'll cut you off out of my life if it's that bad, but karma wins.
Yeah, I think it is important to cut people out of your life who don't serve the greater good, right? My man Shafundu is here. Man, how you been? It's been a while. How you been? We got to catch up, because I guess what, you've been in the new job for over a year now, maybe almost 2, something like that. Hey, man, we've got to catch up. Okay, so Stephanie prefers karma. I see Mike Hurst is here. Mike, do you get revenge on people who have done you wrong? Okay, so now, Christine, I've got another question for you.
Okay.
And for everyone else too. Have you ever been at a job and found out that one of your colleagues makes more money than you?
Yes and no. So no, when I was kind of in the private sector, mainly because, I've been working for a very long time. Companies tend to tell you not to share how much you make. So I've had that. Otherwise, when I worked for the state of Wisconsin, that was public knowledge. But we also understood there were people that were there for a year or two longer and that they did make more money. I think it wasn't even arguments, but it was just discussions about, so what did you start at? Because as time went on, the starting salary would increase. And working for the state, you don't get cost of living adjustments. Like, your raises have to be built into the budget. So it was never a sore subject. We were pretty open about it, but nothing that I think would upset us. It was almost like, you have this goal. If you continue working as hard as what your seniority examiners do, you knew where you were probably going to end up being placed for income eventually.
Okay, so for anyone else listening, have you ever found out that a colleague was making more money than you? And I'll add to that, And add an additional question. Did you get jealous? No, so now, Christine, do you think you would get jealous if you found out that somebody else, the exact same job, close to the same experience, they made more money than you? Do you think you would get jealous in that situation?
Um, I'd probably be concerned and confused because to me, I would sit here and think, okay, am I not meeting expectations? But I think I would honestly bring that to my supervisor, being like, hey, we're doing the same job, same experience, all this other stuff. Why is there a pay disparity? Because I think they should be able to communicate. There's a reason behind it. And it could be something as simple as an oversight.
That's very true. So you would open the dialogue with them, give them the
Mhm.
opportunity to tell you why you don't make as much so that you can actually try to be better at your job so that you can get to that next pay grade if there is a logical, rational reason behind it.
Right. Hmm.
That makes sense to me. I
I
mean,
mean, that's what I would do.
yeah, that seems logical, rational, and pretty reasonable. That sounds like something that we should all strive for.
Well, what would you do?
I think I would have a similar approach. If I found out that someone made more money than me, I would really ask, why? What am I not doing to get the money that they have? Now, here's the
Mhm.
thing. If you tell me that they have simply been working for the company longer, I'm not buying that. They better have a skill set that I don't have or be better at certain skill sets than me. But if we can get to that point and we figure out that I need to increase my skills, then I'm going to work hard to do that. Now,
Mhm.
some reason that's bogus, maybe I'm not the favorite, then I would just find another job that appreciated my talents. So yeah,
Right.
I have a similar approach to you.
Well, and I do think as time has passed, people are now being a little bit more aware that, hey, you can't get in trouble for talking about how much you pay, how much you're making.
Yeah.
Um, so I think that kind of stuff, I just think as time has gone by, like I think if you would ask like my parents when they were in the work environment, like they would sit here and say, you do not discuss pay. You don't talk about that. So I think society has changed too, and
Yeah.
being more transparent. I mean, you can go on job boards right now and over 50% of the postings will tell you what the pay range is.
Right. And it is a pay range. Now, Mike is
Mhm.
saying worked one place where pay was all over the place. Did not make him bitter towards the coworkers, but towards management for sure. And Shafundu agrees. Yeah. And a part of it too is our ability to negotiate. So a lot of that onus is on us because we knew what they offered us and we accepted it.
Yeah.
So let me just get this straight though. So let me just make sure that I'm hearing you correctly and Mike and anybody else listening. If you found out that a person made say $10,000 more than you mean you wouldn't find a way to steal $772,000 from your organization, or you really wouldn't find a way to steal almost $22 million from your organization? I mean, that you wouldn't do that, Christine?
No. I mean, I did hold a position once that I thought I was making bank. I was making like $21 an hour, and I was probably closing like $1 million in mortgage loans every month and a half, 2 months. So and I thought I was like making bank. But it worked for me at that time, and it was a growing position, so I knew it would eventually lead. But I I know there were loan officers making more money than I was, and I was probably pushing out more loans, but I wouldn't try to be stealing money. I don't
Yeah.
know. Why am I like different? Should I have been?
I don't think you should have been, and I wouldn't either. And Stephanie says she thinks that Obama changed the federal law so employers can't prohibit you from talking about coworkers' salary. Yeah, I don't remember which presidency that came under, but you might be
Mm-hmm.
right. So, okay. So I'm just guessing that none of us would actually steal $14 million because we were disgruntled that a fellow coworker was making $10,000 more than us. I'm guessing that many of us can use our big boy and big girl words and say, hey, such and such is making more than me. What can I do to improve my performance so that I can improve my pay? I'm just going to go out on a limb here and say that most of us would actually do something like using our big boy and big girl words.
I think you're right. I hope you're right. I hope we have 100%.
Now, if I'm wrong and there's one person out there that would, embezzle, let me know in the chat. I just want to know. I'd like to talk to you for a minute. So now that brings us to the subject of today's story. Mr. Gary Foster discovered a pay stub that revealed one of his subordinates, I think it was, actually earned $10,000 more than him. So this wasn't even a peer. This was a subordinate at Citigroup. He felt shocked and betrayed. He had resentment towards the organization, and he had opportunity, and he used that opportunity. So let me tell you all what he did, and I'm going to tell you why this is really, really crazy, and how auditors actually kind of help contribute to some of this nonsense. So here's what he did, you guys. Wait a minute. You know what, Christine? Should we have people try and guess what he did?
Oh, yeah.
Ooh. So here's what we're
Are you going to tell him his position?
Ooh, you know what? That would be a good thing to do. Let's see. He was what was it?
AVP in the Internal Treasury Finance Department.
There you go. He was an assistant vice president in the Finance and Treasury Department. So I want you guys to try and take a guess at what he did to embezzle the first round of funds that he stole. This is the first round of funds, because it was quite a substantial amount. Now, Mike says feelings of pay resentment is definitely something that could cave in the rationalization corner of the fraud triangle. Most probably wouldn't, but boy, the pressure would be created. Absolutely.
Well, not just resentment, but I think that a lot of times that could be a punch to people's how they feel about themselves. Why can't I think of that word? But like, am I performing to my abilities? Starting to doubt their capabilities. And then that could eventually end up hurting their work. They're creating that toxic mind, screwing with themselves as soon as they know that.
Oh, yeah.
And some people don't feel comfortable bringing that kind of stuff up to management. Now, am I saying, does that warrant theft and embezzlement? No, it's not what I'm saying. But yeah, that can play mind games with you.
Well, and imagine you're a vice president in an organization, and someone who's, say, maybe a director or maybe even lower makes more money than you. That has to work on your ego just a little bit. And, he was pretty upset. Now, Christine, it looks like we aren't going to get any guesses as to how he did it. There is a small delay. So, we tried to fill it in with some conversation, and watch, as soon as I start saying what it is, that's when the guesses will roll in. Now, Karina is saying that it could hurt morale. I'm going to eliminate the could, Karina. It does hurt morale. It hurts morale 100%. But again, at the same time, you accepted the salary,
Well, and it's making me wonder. So with him being the VP in the Internal Treasury Finance Department, right? It's making me wonder, do they have individuals in city that would report up to him that are more asset liability management specialists, people that actually look and set up all that stuff, and then he oversees them? And if that's the case, I kind of wonder, is that extra 10,000, was that a sign-on bonus to get somebody in? Like, I think sometimes when we look at some of that stuff, it's like, oh, they're just making more money than me. And then you just go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah,
Bringing
yeah.
it up to management and asking those questions sometimes can get you a lot more answers.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point because even though he worked in the Treasury Department, heck, you could have had someone who worked in the secondary marketing department who would have been making a whole lot more than him, based on the risk associated with that job alone.
I
Okay.
know, but even with what he was bringing in a year, I was shocked when I read what his salary was.
Oh, you know what? What was his salary?
100,000 a year.
Oh,
And
yeah.
you're tasked with working in a department that makes a bank money. Am I wrong
But
in that? Your treasury finance?
yeah, but we also have to remember this was 2011.
Okay.
So we have to get the
Wow,
time
inflation.
frame right too. Yeah, yeah, we got to get the time frame right. But so here's what he did, people. Here's what he did. He had been investigating an account of unreconciled and unclaimed money of about $772,000, and the bank wanted to get the account to zero. So he 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 obliged. He wired the money to his personal bank account. And so he said that in general, Citi didn't audit anything that was under $1 million. And so because his department was dealing in billions of dollars per day, so he rationalized that Citi wouldn't notice his embezzlement, and he actually was correct. So here's an aging account, and typically if you have an aging unreconciled account, that money is due to the state, right? It's
Mhm.
due to be escheated to the state.
Yep.
And so he found the account, he was investigating it, and he transferred it to his personal account. And we got some laughter over here happening on LinkedIn, some laughing emojis. I'm wondering, what did I say? What did
Well, it
you
was
say? What did you
unclaimed. I guess he claimed it now.
There you go. Oh
Which
God.
that I don't know. Like, I sit here and go, in the unclaimed money, I've worked having to send money to the state as part of the achievement process. It is honestly crazy because, sorry, state of Wisconsin is 5 years. It is it never fails. We send the money in, and it's literally like 2 days, 3 days after we send it in, we get a handful full of people going, "Hey, I think I have money sitting here." And it's like, we just sent it to the state. Like, it doesn't take much to get it back. But it makes me wonder how many people came forward and somebody's going, "No, you don't have any money. You don't have any money here."
Yeah. Well, here's where it gets really interesting, in my opinion, because I've seen cases like this in the past where people have waited for the auditors to come in and
Mhm.
question why that money is sitting there aging, and they've said you need to write it off. And instead of writing it off to where it appropriately goes, right, they have written it off to their own personal accounts. I remember reading one story where a gentleman said he would actually wait for the auditors to tell him to write it off, and then he would just use that money to fund his personal bank account. So
Ooh.
I'm wondering if in this case, if this is what sparked it, because it said in everything I've read, it said that Citi wanted to clean up the accounts, but I'm guessing that it was probably coming somewhere from the external auditors, maybe even the internal auditors.
Yeah, or somebody in accounting realized it had been sitting out there and they were about to be audited. Like, why give them more GLs to have to look at? We don't know, but dang, it's a large unclaimed property account.
Yeah. Now, Stephanie is saying if you are a remote worker, your salary can range based on where you live. Yeah, a lot of
Mhm.
companies are doing that now. And Shafundu is like, yeah, he had to reconcile it. I mean, he, by golly, he got that account to zero. Okay. So now this was $772,000. And
Mhm.
he said that he felt like part of him was betraying another part of himself, like he was conflicted. And he said he had never done anything like that, but he soon learned to live with the guilt.
Time? I mean, how long do you sit there and let that eat you up until you figure out, nope, nobody noticed?
So he did wait though. Remember, he laid low. He laid low for about a year and a half. He didn't transfer any more illegal funds. But then he had a thought and said he realized that he could get all the things that he wanted because his favorite thing in the world was to travel. And he realized that he could travel with his family and his children. And so he thought maybe he should look at it a different way. So he became an entrepreneur. He actually said maybe this was a godsend.
How do you do that? Wait a year and a half and then just think this is an okay. Yeah. Because like you said, he started feeling confident. His narcissism ran amok.
That's what he actually said about himself. Yeah, he said his narcissism ran amok. Look, if we're just being frank here, I think that if any of us got $772 after taxes, right, there would be so much that you could do with it, and you still had a job making $100,000 a year. You wouldn't necessarily have to worry about anything else. Could you imagine living without having to pay a mortgage? Like you would pay your house off. Let's just say if the average home back then was about $300,000. You could pay $300 cash for your home, pay it off, and then still have $400,000.
Oh, I would be debt free and have money left over, and I still have student loans.
Well, yeah. No, Carol's saying he need to do anything with that amount of money, right? What do you need to do?
Right.
Yeah. And she also says a year and a half, you can live good on that amount. Look, I can
invest
live good.
it. Live off the dividends.
Okay, you know what? Here's the thing. Okay, so let's just say if he invested it and he got, on average, you get about an 8% return, but since accountants can't add, let's just do 10%. Let's just say he was able to get a 10% return on $772,000. You're talking about $72,000 per year back in 2012.
Right.
Now that's on top of his $100,000 a year salary. So you're talking almost $200,000 a year back in 2012. Man, I'd let that money sit and I'd be like, oops, did I wire it to the wrong account? And just live off the interest. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, if you lived off the interest, let's do. If you lived off the interest and they caught you, your restitution money's still sitting there. You never touched any of that. Or do you just put it back? I don't know.
Okay. So now the 772,000 wasn't enough.
Nope.
So for the next 6 years, he stole $22 million.
That's just a lot. And I know they're sitting here and going, oh, he was able to pull it off because the numbers were relatively small. $22 million isn't a small amount. I mean, that's 22 million. That's 3.6 million a year.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Wait, hold on. Yeah, that's like
he was doing for 6 minutes
a year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's $3 million a year. And, granted, Citibank is a huge bank. But
right.
Yeah, so now we get to a point where there's $22 million over the span of 6 years. Now, you know what? I can't.
You talking about Stephanie's comment?
Yes, I can't. So for those of you listening,
Thanks.
Stephanie said, go big or go home, I suppose. You know what? I gotta put a laugh emoji over on LinkedIn myself for that one. That just you know. Oh, okay.
Yeah, but like, I don't know.
Sweet. Okay, so Mike says 22 million is only a pay gap resentment for pro baseball players. Oh, okay. All right. But we're not done yet, guys. So
Mm-mm.
in order to get the 22 million, um, he would manipulate numbers in Excel worksheets for amortization. So he was able to finagle the numbers in some Excel worksheets to cover up what he was doing. But there were also some other things that he disclosed that he did. He said that he would make the entries in the middle of the month because when auditors came in, they typically only looked at the end of the month activity.
Which, I mean, do auditors really care what happens in the middle of the month? I mean, when you're doing, your annual financial audits and stuff like that, I mean, there's so many correcting entries and stuff that happen at the end of the month. They just want to know what the final figures are.
True. But I think this is another point where data analytics would have come into play, especially with the first
Mhm.
instance. Show me all accounts that had a balance over a certain dollar amount at the beginning of the month and then was zero or 50% less at the end of the month or something like that. The
Mhm.
ones that high balance, zero. Like what happened? Where did it go? Um,
Mhm.
but we're not done yet, guys. He had some very unflattering things to say about auditors. And so now I'm going to pull up the stories and we're going to quote him because he said that he was able to fool the external auditors, most of whom were inexperienced. And so let's just quote him for a minute. He said, "These young kids who come in to do the legwork, they really don't know what they're doing. Maybe it's their arrogance, or they're pretending they know what's going on." Then he said, "I could just play dumb with them because if they think you're stupid, then they figure out they're running circles around you. They won't ask that many questions because they don't know what to ask."
Do you feel like when he's saying that he's trying to shift a little of the blame?
Um, I didn't get that from this one. From
Okay.
some other stuff he was saying, but from this one, I think he was just explaining how he was able to do it. That's the impression that I got. So, what about you? You got the impression he was trying to blame shift?
Well, like he was emphasizing that external audit firms need to send in experienced auditors and not kids that just came out of school. Which, I
Maybe.
mean, I understand experience and stuff that's there, but um I also think that these kids, I'm going to say that kids, it also depends on what type of job training they get through their audit firms. Because like we sat here and talked about, what is the monetary threshold that audit firm was looking at?
Yeah. Now, I'll add on to what you just said about the training that they're getting at the audit firms. And I'll also say the support that they are getting.
Mhm.
Because a couple of years ago, when we first started this podcast, there was one story where a group of auditors actually did foil a fraud because they noticed that the logo on a check for the company was different from a check that they were looking at in that moment. And they asked their supervisor, and the supervisor didn't just push them to the side. The supervisor followed up and they actually
Mhm.
caught the fraud. So I think we have several different issues here. One, sometimes they're just ignorant, and I'm using that in the true sense of the word ignorant. They don't know what they don't know. And so they miss out on things that a more experienced auditor might catch. And then sometimes you have some that are very smart and astute, but when
Mhm.
they go to their supervisors, they get shut down.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's one of those things. I kind of look at it like, should they have caught it? Not necessarily, especially if the amount that you've been taking is under their threshold of the I need to care. Is it material? Is it material? Um, and how well they're trained. But I don't know. I think the part that gets me is maybe it's their arrogance. That's the thing I think that gets me in the statement is like they're pretending they know what's going on. They're arrogant. I think that's a pretty big blanket statement. I don't know.
Yeah, and I can see that too. Now, hold on, people, because it gets even better. It's, this was a good one. So he got caught. He got caught. He was getting ready to take off on a flight from Paris to Bangkok. Because remember, he liked to travel. And by the way, he had already resigned his job 6 months before this trip that he was on. I'm guessing he had made enough money to where he could travel the world, right?
Mhm.
So he was on a flight and his phone started blowing up with text from friends and family and from an FBI agent. So they got him while in Paris. Now, the articles that we've read said that his friends encouraged him to disappear to Morocco, but he didn't want to leave his kids in the US. So I'm sorry. So when he landed in Bangkok, that's when he told the FBI he'd surrender at JFK Airport. So he made it to Bangkok, told them he would surrender at JFK Airport, but his friends encouraged him to disappear to Morocco. What kind of friends are those?
Friends he probably took on vacation.
Oh, you know what? That's a good point. I didn't even think about that.
I mean, because I guess I just sit here and I think to myself, if you were a family friend, or if you were part of his family or a friend, and you didn't know this was going on, would you be encouraging somebody to go to Morocco, or would you be going, there's no way that they could do this? There's no way that they did this. It's making me wonder how many of his friends knew, hey, maybe this is true, because how do you support two kids and make a trip from Paris to Bangkok on $100,000 a year?
Right. Well, and remember, by this point, he had already resigned from his job, and I didn't see where he had another job. So I'm assuming he was retired. But you know what you do when you assume. But I'm assuming he didn't have another job. So yeah, how do you really do that? All right. So now, I want to see if anyone can guess how he got caught. Because remember, this was going on for over 6 years. $22 million, and the first one was $772,000, and he waited a whole year after the 772,000, and then over the next 6-year period he got 22 million. So can anyone guess how he actually got caught? Because that is extremely interesting, how he got caught.
Did you talk? Are you ready to talk about what he also bought or not yet?
Oh, you know what? Wait a minute.
Because that's a huge red flag for family and friends and employer.
Wait a minute. I may not have found that one. So wait, let's get there in just
I'm
1 minute.
waiting.
Talk about his advice. I'm trying to stall too, so that's good. So we got two things to stall because I want to see if people can guess how he got caught. So he has some advice for people coming out of college. And this is, he said, for kids coming out of college today, you know, you think you are one person, and then you test it and you realize that there is some darkness in you. What? My advice, his advice. So his advice is to just stay true to who you are. Don't make circumstances, don't make your emotions, don't make anyone change the nature of you because you are a unique person. We all get upset. Looking back, he said he appreciates all of his coworkers and he never had any disdain for the person who was making more than him.
Yeah.
I will say the one thing that strikes me as interesting about this, he says, you think you're one person and then you test it and you realize that there's some darkness in you. I'm gonna so I'm gonna say this and I'm gonna leave it at this because I don't want to be too overly critical because I don't know what he's thinking because he was doing this as a part of an ACFE chapter event. So it's great that he's telling the story, but I notice a lot of you statements and normally people, you know, who are really thinking about this in a tough introspection kind of way would say, hey, I allowed myself to be changed when I saw this opportunity. The you kind of deflects a little bit and it's still trying to do that separation from the event that happened and
Hmm.
himself. And I'll just say that it's, you know, it's just one of those things I notice a lot is the language that we use means a lot and it kind of tells us a lot. Even the part where he says, don't make circumstances, don't make your emotions, don't make anyone change the nature of you. You know, oftentimes people would say, I let the circumstance change me because I saw the opportunity and I exploited the opportunity. So,
I mean, I do give him credit for speaking at the ACFE. They
right.
did mark down there that the ACFE does not compensate convicted fraudsters, so he did not get paid to talk on it.
Yeah.
Which it is commendable because you are educating fraud examiners, so it's a great thing to sit there and do that. But no, I agree with you, Rob. It should have been more introspective on what changing it to I.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to say something a little controversial too, though. I know that they brag and say we don't pay convicted fraudsters, but at the end of the day, why wouldn't you if someone has actually changed their life around and now they're trying to educate others? It makes it hard to go on a road to redemption if
Mhm.
now your ability to make money at something that you were actually good at and can help somebody else has been stifled. And I'm just throwing that out there. I don't know where I really
Right.
sit on that. I'm just playing devil's advocate at this moment, though. But you know, think about it. We talk about being a society that is forgiving, and so now, because otherwise he could have just come out of jail and not said anything to anyone and just lived his life trying to do jobs under the table or any job that would hire him. And he's taken the time to educate others unless it's a part of his restitution plan too. So that could be the case as well. But if it's
Could
not,
be.
then how do you know make a living? Because yeah. Anyway, so just playing devil's advocate, thinking about that one. Okay, so now what did he buy with the money? I'm not sure if I saw that. Maybe I did and just forgot.
BMW, a Maserati. Right before he quit, he spent $3 million on a 6-bedroom home, traveling. I think he ended up having assets valued over 16 million in property. So like I think he owned like 6 different homes.
Yeah.
Had a series of cars. Yeah.
So the cheapest Maserati right now The manufacturer's suggested retail price is $68,000. The higher end, and we're talking new here, higher end Maserati is about $160,000 for 2024.
Yeah, and his home, I'm guessing it wasn't cheap. He purchased a home in New Jersey that overlooked Lower Manhattan.
Ooh, yeah, that wasn't a cheap home.
Mm-mm. Yeah.
Wow. That
How
is,
did he get caught, Robert? I'm not seeing any comments, but my LinkedIn's not working very well right now.
well, me either. So, oh yeah, well, I forgot. We didn't even tell how he got caught. Oh, my bad. Thank you, Christine. Okay. He got caught because he made a $3 million transfer, but he actually broke one of his rules. He made that transfer at the end of a month. Now, here's where this one gets really interesting too, because let's see if I can get back to it. So he wired $3 million at the end of the month. And here's what he said. He said that if he had still worked at the bank at the time, he might have been able to smooth talk his way out of the slip up.
How do you smooth talk your way out of a $3 million slip up? I mean, it's not like you can just like click a button and reverse the transaction. He wired the money.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oof.
But that part was kind of telling too, though. You know,
Mhm.
if I'd still been working there, I would have been able to. He said it may have been able to smooth talk his way out of it. That is wild.
Mhm.
That is wild. Here's the thing, though, and he called these novice auditors, these new auditors, arrogant.
I think maybe that's what it was, the perturbing part of it. The auditors didn't catch it. Well, nobody that you work with thought, oh, he's driving a Maserati. He lives in this amazing home. How does he get to travel all the time when he's got two kids? I understand. So that's another thing. Like, and me and my ex-husband are separated. Our kids have a split house. I don't think he ever remarried. So that's a lot of expenses for a single income when you have two children and you're traveling, even back in 2011.
Yeah. I still wonder though, when people steal so much, how is it that you accumulate more assets? Like this is the age-old question we've kind of been asking on this show a lot. Some people steal when there's an illness in the family and you need to pay for medical expenses, or there's a death in the family and you lose, like your sole source of income or your primary
Mhm.
source of income because your spouse dies or something like that. But in almost all the cases we see, even if it is something like that, they don't just get a average lifestyle. It's always something extravagant, and I don't know if I can really wrap my head around that.
I think what it comes from, and I don't want to say I don't think it's a rationalization, but it is. So, like when you talk about sick family, having to pay medical bills, stuff like that, it's having those struggles. So, let's say for him, it could have sat there and it could have been a little bit more than just the money, but like I'm owed this because I work hard. I deserve nice things. I deserve to go on these trips because I work hard. I think it is almost like a weird rationalization
Yeah.
that my life is hard. This will help offset those feelings of having this hard lifestyle. Maybe it's even to help take their mind off the guilt. If I've got all these
Hmm.
extravagant items and stuff like that, this is just me thinking, which is dangerous at times, I know. Um, is that what it is? These bigger things, these better things, the traveling? Is it a distraction from that inner voice that is trying to come out and say, this is wrong. You shouldn't be doing it. Is it a distraction?
That's a good point. I just, and maybe it takes a special kind of person to think about it in those terms. Yeah. So all right. So look, you guys, here's the case of someone exploiting the system, literally telling us that, well, you know, accountants, external auditors, they don't necessarily know what they're doing. They're young and they're inexperienced, and I've been able to manipulate them. This is exactly what he said. He was able to test the system out a couple of times, and after testing it out, he waited a year and a half, and then he just went gung ho. So, yeah.
Yeah, when you guys are doing audits, I know as an examiner, it was just always weird, our rationalization, because you always want to sit here and be like, oh, I'm doing a random sample. But sometimes doing a random sample with a thought process of, okay, so when is fraud more likely to occur? Okay, look at the Monday after a pay period for somebody's paycheck to be gone, around the 15th, sometimes the beginning of the month, sometimes the end of the month. And I also know that we were really big on not just going for large dollar transactions, things that just looked weird, transactions that consistently were even dollar amounts. I mean, sometimes just look at that sort of stuff. I don't know, Robert, if you know of any resources out there for newer auditors that have books on kind of these red flag things to look for when you're pulling samples for stuff like wire transfers, GL history. I'm not aware of any.
The thing that's really interesting is we force people to do random samples as if judgmental sampling is bad. Shouldn't we exercise professional skepticism? Judgmental sampling is okay. If something looks funny, if it smells like poop, it might just be poop. So, now Mike Hurst says just because the pressure is met doesn't mean they'll stop stealing. Probably undoes their rationalization, but hey, cognitive dissonance is hard. It is, man. But yeah, I just I think that at some points we have to start doing some judgmental sampling too, because your judgment is there for a reason. You should be able to use it.
Well, especially if management is coming to you with whether it's an operational or a financial issue. Let's say looking at an expense GL, right? And they're worried about expenses being excessive. And there's certain individuals that they want you to look at. Like, okay, pick some of them and then randomly select other people, because then you're also going to get an idea of what the potential acceptable type of expenses and everything else. So I think it's trying to get that whole look. Keep in mind, you can always increase your sample size. You can always add more on. And also looking at data month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year, if you have that capability for a lot of your general ledgers. And it's more than just fraud or theft. I've had experience where we realized it was an operational issue that needed a correction because something was direct posting to the wrong GL. It wasn't anybody's fault. It was the way that the system was set up, but without looking at that quarter over quarter and seeing those big upswings and downswings, sometimes that even helps on the operational side, not necessarily fraud.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I don't know if I have anything else to say about this one. Any surprises? No dead bodies or anything this week?
No dead bodies. I found I think it was his actual conference discussion that he had. It is on YouTube if you guys are wanting to go out there. Gary Foster. I did not get a chance to do that. I think the only thing you didn't say was how he did plead guilty and how long he had to sit in prison.
Oh yeah. How long was it? Let me see.
8 years.
Oh, wow.
He did serve, he got out 6 months early. He served 7 years and 6 months. And he was released on probation in October of 2019.
Wow.
Which is, I mean, I know it's 22 million. I don't know. I'm to the point now where, I mean, 7 years, 6 months, that's a pretty long sentence, but then it was 22 million. I don't even know if I don't think the United States abides by the sentencing table enough. It would be so easy. They've got it right there for you. Just stay in your parameters.
Yeah. Well.
That's a discussion for another day, I know.
Yeah, you notice I didn't say anything about that. Yeah.
I mean, this is one of the few stories that we do talk about that we know how much time they ended up serving, because normally we're waiting to
Very
see
true.
when they get sentenced.
Very true. There's another story that we did that I followed up on. It was the feeding the children, the one where they said that they were feeding like 2,000 children a month, but the address was some apartment. And
Mm-hmm.
apparently they indicted like 5 more people recently on that one. I think it was Feeding
Okay.
Kids America or something like that. So I've got that one to possibly follow up on. That was just really wild and interesting. But yeah.
Are you going to have to do another like half-hour episode called the Friday Fraudster follow-up?
Oh my goodness, that could you imagine? Because there's a lot of stories to follow up on, and I was looking at the catalog and I was like, wow, because this is episode 133.
Yeah.
Freaking episodes.
Mm-hmm.
That's and because what's that? That's almost 3 years. What is it? Actually is 3 years because um
Mm-hmm.
you know every once in a while you take some time off. What's 52 weeks in a year? Accountants can't
You got
add.
your holidays.
Or your
You just
repeats.
Well,
Yeah,
when did you do your first one?
I can't remember.
Because you got to make that your anniversary date then.
Yeah, I know, but everything is like a blur, because I started it in the middle of the pandemic. Heck, I needed to find a way to kind of build some visibility. I'm sitting here trying to figure out where my next meal was going to come from and how I was going to make money. So, oh, wait a minute. Shri is saying it was 2021. She's also saying she thinks there needs to be an episode of why I didn't get my mug. You know what? I actually did fall behind on some of the prizes. I think I still owe Carol a prize, and I'm like, yeah, where? I'm like, sorry, but I don't owe Shri a mug. All right, so thank you for joining us, episode number 133, and if you have any audit training needs for your department or your IIA chapter, your company, let me know. Also, anyone who's interested in joining our audit support group, we're going to meet the 4th Friday of every month starting this month. Drop audit support into the chat and I'll send you the link. We will be having some good conversations over Zoom. We're doing it once a month starting this month. So, with that said, thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.